Welcome to The Complex. This is a podcast about multifamily, and today I'm extremely excited to have with me Nikki Crosby. We're going to be talking about all things marketing, and I think the reason that I invited Nikki specifically is just because in terms of like some parallels, we both have really lengthy and sort of deep careers, and this is going to be the most fun conversation I think that I have about, we're not going to spend too much time on the history, but we're going to definitely talk about the evolution of marketing. I was introduced to Nikki Crosby by my other favorite Nikki, which is Nikki Laura, and just excited to have her. Here. So we're going to get started. Nikki, this is the obligatory time where you have to tell everybody. We all just fall into this business. Like no one ever says like, yeah, I decided that this is what I wanted to do, and tell us how you fell into the business, possibly literally. I don't know.
Yeah, let's call it a splash.
Okay.
If you will.
Yes, fabulous. I love it.
So 1997 in high school, needed a summer job, started working at an apartment community swimming pool as a lifeguard.
Which is funny. Like, do we have lifeguards anymore? I guess some places do.
But it's rare. I think it was a little bit more consistent back in the 90s. So I did that for 5 summers, loved it, while I was going to school. And then kind of developed a relationship with all the team in the office. And as the pool was closing one summer and I was lamenting over what my next job was going to be, I was invited to apply for a leasing consultant position that they had available at that community and got the job.
But wait, you were in school?
I was in school.
What was the plan?
I was going to school to be an elementary school teacher.
Oh, that tracks completely. And also that those skills are transferable.
They are very transferable. Yes, they are. So it didn't take me very long working in that role to realize that this was something I was really good at and really enjoyed. And I also had kind of already determined at that point that this whole elementary school teacher career path probably wasn't going to be the best fit for me. So I went full in multifamily and promoted to a property manager at 22 years old, which was pretty remarkable at that time.
Yeah. How big was the property?
318 units.
Jeez.
So yeah, pretty big deal. But I just, I really loved working with people. We are in the people business. We can call it the apartment industry, but we really are in the people business. And I loved working with people, loved my residents, loved leasing. And so, I was given the opportunity at a young age and very grateful to the leaders who gave me that opportunity. After working on site for about 5 years, my property sold.
That's the worst, isn't it? Yeah.
And so, I was told by the company I was working for at the time, don't worry, we're going to find another spot for you. And I was looking, at their job postings, and I saw a posting for a marketing specialist position at their corporate office. And I said, can I apply for that?
Yeah, because that's everyone's dream.
Right.
They think, for what it's worth. There's great things about it, but I just find it interesting how often someone on site is just like, well, my dream is to be a corporate or my dream is to be whatever. And I'm not saying that they aren't great things to aspire to, but interesting that you were just like immediately like, can I do that?
Mm-hmm. And, it worked out really well. Coming from on site into that position, I really had a lot of great perspective that I could bring to the marketing team in, being able to deliver sales training to the on-site team, after been in their shoes and know what type of support and resources that they needed. And I just knew what needed to happen in order to close the lease. And so I could help design marketing support in a way that would support that process.
But isn't that interesting, that partnership, and I'm sure this can come up later too, the partnership between marketing brings the people in and then there's a job to do after that. And so it's like the fact that you weren't siloed and only had a, understanding of sort of one side of that probably made you extremely successful and valuable.
Right. Marketing does not stop at delivering the lead to the community. It goes all the way through to closing the lease, all the way through to renewing the lease year after year. I mean, marketing influences so much of that customer experience on site. And so to have a more holistic approach to that strategy is, very much the key to success.
And you've stayed in corporate marketing since then.
I have.
Yeah.
I've had the opportunity to work for 4 amazing companies, all led by very entrepreneurial leaders who have trusted me and, given me a lot of autonomy to try new things and, experiment with new marketing strategies, new technologies. And so I've been very blessed to have that career path, which has led me to where I am today. Proud to say now working as Vice President of Marketing for Thompson Thrift, which is a national real estate developer, builder, and operator. And we have a multifamily portfolio as well as commercial and industrial. 16 members of my team. So it's a pretty amazing growth path from starting as that lifeguard, to where I am today. And I'm very proud of it.
You should be. I think too, like for a if anybody's listening that's like not in multifamily or just considering it, like please understand the opportunities that are there. I started like part-time temporary leasing, filling in for like maternity leave. You started as a lifeguard. Someone else on my podcast started as the person that cleans the buckets for the ground person. In public housing. And so I just, that's a testament, I think, to what this industry has to offer all of us if you're giving back to the industry. So anyway, just love your story. I love it. I love it. I love it. So we want to touch a little bit on the evolution of marketing strategy and also because I just think conceptually and fundamentally some things haven't changed, just the way that we deliver it. But my favorite thing that you wrote in your notes was that like one of the biggest concerns was picking like your cover photo for the magazine or the flags. Like talk to me back in the day. And I used to sell for one of the magazines. And so I remember the big moment where you're like, oh, I sold a front cover, pick your pool picture. Did you have like a favorite photo that you always picked?
I remember the first community that I worked at, we had kind of an S curve of flowers.
Fancy.
Some like blue salvia, with some red accents. And so I was always trying to get that photo that included that S curve of flowers in front of my building. And that was like the best win when you could get the good photo in front of your community.
I mean, so you were curating content back then.
For sure.
I mean, we didn't call it that by any means. You're just like, no. And you would call your rep and be like, I need new photos. If I'm going to pay for the front cover, I'm going to need new photos.
And your rep would come out with her digital camera, which was a pretty big deal, and take those photos right on the spot. That was like the big day, when they were coming out to take photos for your next ad. I
love that. I definitely love that. And we want to spend a lot of time on sort of like, current and future state, but enter the internet. I mean, I remember the first time that we started putting like actual URLs at the bottom of some of the print ads to try to get people to go online. And I remember putting QR codes in there. What was that like from your perspective? And I don't know where you worked at that time, but like, do you remember a moment where you just like, look, we have to shift?
Well, yeah, in the beginning, you purchased your print advertising and the internet listing was just a very inexpensive little upgrade to the package.
It was like an add-on.
Yeah, like $99 and we'll also put you online, And around that time I think a lot of us had company websites where we had listings for all of our different communities, but as the evolution of just internet influence came on board, we quickly realized, okay, each of our communities needs its own website with its own URL. All of a sudden, we're starting to see the shift that we're getting more leads from this digital advertising than we are from the print ad.
Yeah.
And we have the technology in place to track that.
Right. You had visibility. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I can't really pinpoint the moment when it shifted, but there was a definite shift where all of a sudden the print ad was really irrelevant and the digital advertising is what was most important. Yeah,
I would say, and if I'm a little bit off, I can't be that far off, but I think it's 11 years since at least For Rent printed like a magazine. Like I worked for For Rent from 2011 to 2014. And I do believe the tail end of that, like we weren't, I remember the moment where Nikki was like, hey, they're pulling the mag. So, and then we had to sort of scurry and get out there and talk about what you just said, like the importance of like the digital piece and the tracking and the transparency. Can I ask you a weird question right now?
Sure.
Do you still have like drive-by or signage listed as any of your marketing like sources in your systems?
It is absolutely still.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. It's still there. And there is some traffic that is still attributed to that. I think what we recognize, however, is that might be the point at which that first contact was made to our community.
Yeah.
But that was not the first time that potential renter interacted with our community in some way.
Yeah.
They absolutely searched on their phone apartments near me. They
Right.
absolutely already looked up our reviews online, maybe checked out our social media. It's just the first point in which they chose to identify themselves may have been when they walked into our office and said, "Oh, I was just driving by."
That's what I've always, and I've been not frustrated, but for a long time, it was kind of like even in the major property management systems, you didn't have multi-source attribution options. And then, you would be running reports and you would be knowing that it was like Swiss cheese, like you had holes in it and you knew it because you had agent generated, I guess they were the ones that documented like, yeah, the signage brought them in. And you're like, but their zip code was, 4 states away. So help me understand, some of that. But I think we're all getting better. I mean, obviously data's gotten a lot better to make that different for us. And
as a marketer, you have to do a good job of telling that story to your business. I know one of the things we do is we have a monthly reporting package that goes out to our business. And yes, the, leads and leases attributed to source is a piece of that package.
Yeah.
But there are also a lot of other components of that package to show how website visitors were interacting with our website, how people were interacting with our social, our reviews, different things like that. And so you really have to paint the full picture of all of the ways that people are paying attention to our communities, not just when they submit the lead or convert to the lease.
And all the pieces of the puzzle are important. I mean, we can't have this just fantastic online presence and then they show up and they're like, this I was catfished. Like you can't do that. So it's like all of that's where we do continue to have to say the words curb appeal. Like it sounds like old phrasing now kind of. But it's not like it's legitimate because we have to prove, all the things that you did that you could control online. We have to prove that when they get there.
For sure.
So that way it doesn't seem like, oh no, this isn't real. I love the pictures of like, the pools and the landscapes and such that like even I would be like, that's not what that property looks like. That is not true. But I mean, that's where it's like, so many different departments involved also. Definitely a lot of different. So then we're going to move on now to social because, we kind of touched on a little bit because that's what they're, sort of engaging with. Do you remember some of the first times where you had to convince someone to, maybe do some spend in the social realm?
Yes, it was challenging. I remember really being the one bringing the data and showing, this is what we're seeing from industry trends. This is how much we're seeing interaction on these social profiles and then click-throughs to the property website and engagement. I was always the one bringing that data to the team to compel why we needed to make those investments. And, it's kind of come back to bite me a little bit now.
Oh, no.
No. We've educated all of our stakeholders now that this data is available. And now we're really being challenged to bring the data all the time with any investment that we want to make. They're looking for how can we tie this back to return on investment. And so sometimes you get what you ask for there.
Well, right. Like here you were proving it and now they're saying prove it. And
continue
and
to
it's
prove
not
it.
Always. I mean, that's not a perfect system. I mean, maybe someone could sit across the table from me and be like, no, I know exactly the whole path of everyone, and I know exactly how to, spend my money, so I waste nothing. And but no one's ever said that yet. I don't know. Unless are you the one? You have the perfect.
No, I do not have the perfect plan. But, you really have to lean into what you have available. Take the most advantage of the tools that you have available. Stay curious, ask a lot of questions, and, just make sure that you're really evaluating the data that you do have available to you.
So let's talk about, when you're saying like things available to you, like everything costs money. And I think too, on the budget side, even, it's the same conversation today. We're just talking about it like in a tech stack way versus, back when we were talking about, you had a print ad, you had an internet ad, and then like, hey, let's add social or Craigslist even. I mean, I remember, starting to sell some of those like add-ons. And I remember sitting across from a marketing director saying to me, well, Katrina, like all of this, like you've proven yourself here. This all feels really good, but my marketing budget didn't get bigger. So, let's explore that, for just a second. Like, what have you seen over time on, the marketing budgets? What challenges do you have convincing people that like we need all of this or most of this or just as much as we can get, I guess? I don't know. What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much room for marketing expense in that, expense ratio for operating an apartment community. And the challenge over the years is that with all of this new technology that has come available, I'm really starting to see my marketing budgets being chewed up by marketing software costs.
Oh, yeah.
And
True.
These tools are very valuable, and yes, you can prove the value and the influence that these tools are having over, your ability to convert. But at the end of the day, there's only so many dollars per unit available that can be allocated to marketing expenses. And so you have to really be able to make decisions on, if I really feel that this particular marketing tool is important, what am I willing to let go of in order to make this kind of the star of the show?
Oh, I hate I hate when you have to talk about what to sacrifice. And sometimes you can feel like you do have really good data where you can just be like, look, this is the thing that, I think that we can live without based on what, what I'm seeing or something like that. But yeah, especially, and that's a good comment on, it's like software, like CRMs, for example. Is CRM a marketing cost or is CRM an administrative cost?
I see it different at, different companies that I've worked for, what they really consider to be a software or an IT expense versus a true marketing expense. So I think it's really important for you to know what your company views these costs as and where they, what GL they would be putting this into so that you know how much flexibility you have to be able to evaluate these tools that are on the market today.
Yeah, and I mean, at Gray Capital, we're in acquisition mode all the time. And so, when we're looking at T12s and seeing some other expenses, it probably did used to feel a little more standard, or you could identify it. But like now, sometimes you get marketing costs that you're just like, what? And then once you actually, maybe get to dig in, and I can see like a lot of the products that someone has, and it's just like, I guess occupational philosophy on where do we want those things to go. If CRM is managing or helping us manage our follow-up, for example, we did used to do that manually in the office. I had a binder. I bet you did too.
Oh, yeah.
We had guest cards. We called them back. We had note cards, and it's like, did the CRM replace those things? Because those things weren't marketing costs. They weren't to bring someone in. They were for us to do good work with what we had. And I don't know if that's the line, is it marketing is just what it takes to get them in? And is administrative what it takes to turn them into a lease? I have no idea. I don't know if you ever thought about it or like, and that's where you have to sort of work with accounting, I guess, or just with your leaders and say like, hey, this is where these expenses go. But yeah, software costs, none of that is slowing down, and it probably is eating into your lead gen. Is there anything like that and you don't have to name the vendors if you don't want, but like, is there a piece of that you're just like, no, I have to have this and I have to have that, and it, do you have, is it video content creation that you're, is it very hefty social? I don't know. Do you have some have-tos, like some non-negotiables from Nikki Crosby?
So I could share with you my non-negotiables today.
Okay.
But what's really important to think about in that question is, what is most important for the strategy for your assets that you're representing today?
Yeah.
I think that is a common challenge for marketers today, of maybe being caught up in the way they learned it at one point or the way it was with one company that they were working for. You really have to understand what the goals are of your portfolio or your individual assets that you're representing, and making sure that your marketing strategy is designed around supporting those main goals. Depending on what the owner's goals are for that property, there may be different targets that you're shooting for. Is it retention? Is it heads in beds? Is it expense control? Is it reputation?
Sure.
You really need to understand what that is, and then design a strategy that's really focused on meeting those main goals for the property. And then you might find that things like social media or video leasing strategies are a really important piece of that strategy, or maybe they're not. Also, what type of property class it is, I think also is really influential in that as well.
Yeah.
You kind of look at the difference between maybe like a luxury, very expensive rent type of community versus maybe something that's a little bit more like affordable or attainable level of housing. You're going to get different results from your lead gen strategies based on where your rent range is. So you really have to think about, maybe because my rent range is a little bit more in that affordable, attainable range, I don't have to spend quite as much on lead gen, and I can invest in some of these other conversion tools that are out there.
What's your, obviously lease ups get everything.
Yes.
That's always hard. In my previous company, like you'd have a lease up and they would get anything that was new and fancy, because to your point, like the goal is, get this leased up, let's get it on permanent financing or whatever. And I know Thompson Thrift has some just amazingly gorgeous assets out there that are in lease up. So really, I think that just speaks to your, like, there's really not a one size fits all, which I think can definitely be hard. But what happens when like the honeymoon period's over and lease up is over? Do you have to do you have to pick and choose at that point?
You do have to pick and choose, but if you have set yourself up with good analytic tracking and source attribution during that lease-up period when you were trying everything,
cast a wide net,
then it's a little bit easier to, kind of coast into that stabilization mode, because now what you can do is you can start looking at your analytics and see, what was delivering the best cost per lead and cost per lease, which sources had, the fewest number of days from lead to conversion. Look at all of those different metrics that go into, that journey that the customer is on. And then you can just kind of start to trim the fat. The ones that maybe weren't generating the top results, those are the easy ones to just start trimming out of your marketing sources, and then see where you land. Take off one at a time and see how that goes and ease your way into stabilization.
I think I've had struggles before because sometimes on lease ups, almost everything looks successful because obviously the product usually coming out of the gate is going to come in top of the market with all the new and fancy things. Sometimes people jump ship their apartment might only be 2 years old, but they'll jump ship to go to the lease up because either, if you're behind, maybe there's some specials or maybe there's something somewhat gimmicky, whatever that ultimately looks like. But, I think availability plays a role. Like some of the properties, I think some of the places I've struggled is when we have, a property that's like consistently 95%, and the data is ebbs and flows, and it seems to be based on availability. So it's like, is it the source's fault that it just happened to be more people looking for one bedrooms, and I don't have any one bedrooms at this property with and like that's where I think to your point, when owners are like, prove it. Like you're looking at something and you're just like, but let me tell you, there's more to the story than like just this number right here. Like I don't want to drop a source just because, and we can't just do that fast anyway. I mean, I don't know. What's your evaluation period? Is it every 30 days, every 60 days? Do you make decisions based on aggregate data for no less than X, or how do you do that?
It kind of depends on what's going on with the particular assets. Obviously, if we're not meeting the goals, we're going to be evaluating at least every month, if not, in the middle of the month, to really make sure that we are investing those dollars to the best of our ability to convert as many leases as possible.
Yeah.
A property that's stabilized and meeting goals, we might be evaluating that more on a quarterly basis.
Yeah.
But just what's most important is that you are looking at the data and always looking for those outliers. If you have multiple properties that you are managing and you're seeing that there's these 2 or 3 properties that are kind of falling below the average, that's when you really need to dig in and try to figure out, is it that the source isn't the right source for that market? Do we need to take a look at the marketing that's tied to that source? Maybe the ad needs refreshed, or we're not using the right keywords, or whatever that might be.
Or is it the people at the end?
That's definitely worth looking into. You have to attack it from all angles. Really, you're most successful if you have kind of like a critical properties checklist. If this property is underperforming, these are the top 5 things that we're going to look at, these key performance indicators, to see if we're on track or if we're below the average. And then you kind of have to layer that. Okay, so if this key performance indicator is off, then here's the 3 things we're going to dive into related to this one. And it's kind of like, peeling back the layers of the onion to really try to figure out where you have the best opportunity to improve.
In a role like yours, I'm just sitting here thinking and trying to imagine what that's like and how often you're doing that for an individual asset, or is it the 16 people that you have working under you that you've kind of laid it out almost scientifically like that? If this, then that, if this, then that, and then they execute and bring it to you? How often are you looking at an individual asset's marketing strategy?
So our regional marketing managers are looking at this on a very frequent basis with all of their managers. We're doing bi-monthly calls, so twice a month. We're doing calls with the managers, the regionals, the marketing team. We're looking at all of our key statistics for every property to see, are we on track? Do we have any opportunities to improve? And then based on what we find on that call, those regional marketing managers are digging in and looking for those opportunities. They're the one peeling back the layers of the onion, and then bringing that information to our attention so that others, myself, or the VPs of community management can weigh in and provide the resources that might be needed to help solve that challenge.
That just sounds like to me a dream structure, because and I've always, we talked about this already today once, I've always worked at smaller companies. So I've always been, in many ways, HR and IT and marketing and some of these other things. And I enjoy it. So I'm not, but I also do sometimes maybe fantasize or dream about what would it be like, to have that intensity and be able to really look at that, and then to have people that can, execute. I just think that structure is kind of fantastic. There are other companies that have, a similar size that may have a marketing department of 3. And I think it kind of says it all, because at the end of the day, if we're not getting leases and we're not getting rent, does anything else matter? Does anything else matter? So it's on one hand, you're telling me the marketing budgets are just getting chopped up and chewed up and spit out. And that happens a lot. But then also I just love that there's an intense focus on it too, because it is the fuel. The engine goes nowhere. It goes nowhere, without it.
There's pros and cons to each.
Oh, yeah?
The big team and the small team. I've also worked on the small team.
Yeah.
I've worked at a startup before where, it was myself and the regional manager and the VP of community management. And, we were figuring it all out together without any additional support. And, in those cases, you are wearing a lot of hats. But sometimes that's a good thing, because what's going on within your operational platforms. You know what training is being delivered to the on-site team. You are intimately knowledgeable of everything that's influencing that property's success. And so sometimes it's a lot easier and quicker to correct than it is with a larger organization. So either way you look at it, it's great to have the extra resources with a larger team because you have more hands on deck, but at the same time, sometimes you lose some of those details.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop dreaming about it then. It's all right. It's okay. Let's talk a little bit about like just how you're choosing then, what's going to be in the tech stack, because, here we're talking about how all these new things came on board and then we have to find money for it.
Yeah.
Especially based on how important it is. What are some of the things that are like most important to you? Like you mentioned earlier, I was just thinking, like you said, bi-monthly calls. Not everyone is so flexible. So in terms of like you're in contracts and like you can't necessarily just go up and down and, like not that nimble, but do you actively look for sources then that do have flexibility? Like how important is flexibility to you?
Flexibility is extremely important.
Yeah.
And my vendors are extremely important. I think that's a really...
Yes, they are.
Yes, they
As a former vendor, yes, they are.
I think that's a really underutilized asset for marketers today is leaning into their vendors.
Yeah.
When you are subscribing to some sort of a service with a vendor, it is more than just having a login to a reporting dashboard where you can see how your ads or your tool is performing.
Yeah.
You should absolutely be having monthly or quarterly business reviews with your vendors. You should be asking questions about anything that doesn't make sense and really relying on them to educate you. Ask them what you can be doing better. Ask them, how is my performance with your tool comparing to my competitor's performance with your tool? Is there something that I'm missing or not doing that I could be leveraging a little bit better? And I know we're all so busy and it's really hard.
I hate that we're busy.
I know. It's really hard, to work time into your calendar to talk to your vendors on a regular basis. But I promise you, it's worth it. It really
I think
is.
There's like a misconception out there that and I do think it takes a minute to get to that relationship. Like, I think people at this point vendors know, like, don't send in your rookie to me. That's not going to work out. It's just not going to work out. But I also am like you, like I've learned over time, like if something doesn't feel right or it's not going well, I take a lot of responsibility for if things aren't going well. I'm sure there's something I didn't do, or I'm sure there's something that we could do better. And I think vendors will tell you if you ask them,
Correct.
Like I do think that there's like a nervousness on their side of like, well, how much do I go in and make sure they understand, like, in order for this to work, you have to at least do X, Y, and Z, and you're not doing X, Y, and Z, or, whatever. I think good vendors are very graceful with all of that. But I think it's great that you do that. Talk to me about maybe, have you ever had a revelation or like a big moment in one of those quarterly or monthly business reviews that made a difference, like a tweak or a change that made a difference?
I feel like that happens all the time.
Oh, okay.
I'm constantly, the key is to stay curious. Keep asking questions. If your vendor is telling you something and you don't understand like how that's working or how that's influential in the performance, ask, show me, what does this mean? Let's click, share your screen, show me how this works.
Yeah.
And when you do that, you get those aha moments. I mean, I just had one this week with some source tracking issues we were having on our website. And, we just started clicking through and clicking on buttons. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is the step that we're missing our source attribution. Like, this is where it is. And so, it's things like that where if you don't stay curious and keep asking questions, you're not going to really get down to what you're trying to do and accomplishing your goals. And you're just always going to have these little things that aren't working and you're not really going to know why.
I'll get to that eventually. Yeah, I've had a situation on like a review where you realize like the language, like obviously with AI or things that are like AI or bots or, wherever it's pulling like some of that dialogue. Like I always think that we could do better. My team, myself, could do better with the responses. Like I kind of joke, but I don't, because I was really proud of myself as a leasing agent. I'm sure you were as well, that I just wish that I could figure out how to get them to answer questions. I don't want to say the way I want them to. I want them to have their personality, but I actually want them to answer the questions exactly in very certain ways. Some of that from like a legal standpoint, some of that just from like a tactical sales standpoint. Right. Words are important. And like I've noticed some of our responses, like just taking a minute to actually get in there and rewrite some of those responses so that way they're clearer, or so that way they have some personality. If you're in a sales capacity, there is a way to say, like, we are pet friendly and we have this and we have that. There's a way to say it where it's just like bullet points and information. And then there's a way to have like a sprinkle of influence. And so I think like that's one of the things I found in a business review one time, where I was just like, man, we're just given like the most canned, boring, everybody answers, and we're not differentiating ourselves. So probably doing those reviews is the way to find out if you are or aren't differentiating yourself.
Absolutely.
And we have to find ways to do it. So how do you lay out your tech stack?
That's a challenge. And I think, for our audience, there's kind of two different groups that are going to be hearing this. There's going to be the ones that maybe are the decision makers or influential in the decision makers as far as what technology you're using. And then there's the rest of us where this is what we've been given. This is what we have to work with.
Yeah.
And so you have to really, make sure that you're leveraging depending on where you're at. So let's talk about the decision makers. For me personally, I really like to limit my stack. And I say that from the standpoint of I don't like to have a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah.
I feel like when you layer too many different pieces of technology into what all is eventually touching your customer in one way or the other, there's a lot of downfalls with that. First of all, you lose data. As you bounce customers back and forth from, they're on your website and then they're interacting with this AI chatbot, and then we're sending them over to this video leasing platform, and, we're kind of bouncing them all around in the journey. When they get to the end of the journey, I don't know all of the steps that they took in the process. Like, I don't know what that journey really looked like because I lost them several times in the way. So I really like to try to limit that as much as possible. Also, you have to think about all of the different interactions that then your customer is getting. If they're getting like email or text notifications based on whatever tool they're interacting with, it's coming from different phone numbers and different email addresses.
Is the worst.
The template of the email looks different,
Right.
And that's got to be so confusing to the customer, especially in today's world of all this spam communication that we're getting.
Yeah.
Like, how can they trust that who they're hearing from is really our team?
Yeah.
When it's coming from all of these different places.
Yeah.
So you really have to be thinking about the customer experience in mind when you're thinking about what you're going to layer into your tech stack. It's very important.
I would guess there are operators out there that haven't, consumer shopped their own sites to see what that feels like. Or at least we just don't do it enough, or maybe we don't do it after we add something to the tech stack. Because, like the property management system's probably getting, it's integrated with something else. So it's coming in as a lead and they're getting whatever that auto, triggered response is there, but then maybe also getting a human one. And then maybe they engage again and then they get another one. Like, you're right. I mean, we could have people that got 9 different notifications, like, thanks for scheduling a tour. Don't forget about your tour. And then also getting an agent that's like, would you like to schedule a tour? Like, is there anything more annoying than that? Right. That's a good tip, though. I mean, everyone should really do that. And that is probably a good way to just start to say, okay, do I have too much? Because you could have too much.
You could.
Yeah.
And so you really have to ask yourself, when I look at this full customer journey, which points are the most important to me? And that could be different things to different companies. Maybe it's the revenue management piece. Maybe it's the CRM. There's all different points that could be most important to your business.
Yeah.
So pick your best in class for what's most important to you, and then layer in only what is needed to support the rest of the journey. Don't get too crazy with too many tools, because you'll be overwhelmed. You'll be spending way too much money.
Yeah.
You'll have even more vendors that you need to do your QVRs with.
Right.
It just gets too complicated.
Right. And all I'm picturing for some reason right now is like myself when I buy like a really fancy pair of shoes and then I never get to wear them because I have zero outfits that like would ever actually work with the fancy shoes. So it's like, I also think too there could be some tech stack decisions that are made because something is like feels really grand, but like it's maybe not working with anything else. So you have to just you like pick your one thing. It might be your shoes. Pick your one. I love that tip. Pick your one thing, and then maybe let the rest of it fall gracefully. But pick it because it's the most important, like the absolute most important piece to you.
I will also say to the decision makers.
Yeah.
Don't make your decision based off of a demo.
Right.
Because they're bringing the best possible case study scenario to the demo to hook you.
Yeah.
You have to test it. You have to see how it really works with all of your other technology that you have in place. See what the results are that start coming in. See how those results compare to a property that's not using that same technology. Like at the end of the day, are we really seeing increased leasing velocity from this? Or is it just cool or the wow factor?
How do you do that though? Do you pick one and like A/B test in-house, or do you, say, hey, connect me with someone that's been actively using this, or show me another website that's using it and I'll mess around with it myself? Like, how do you get to that point, or do you A/B test inside?
I think those, peer recommendations are obviously very important.
Yeah.
I do want to go click around on a competitor website or, whatever it might be and see how it works. But really, testing it in your stack is the only thing that's really, truly going to tell you if it's working or not. It's also going to give you insight into what that company-wide rollout needs to look like, because you really need to try to figure out, like, where is my leasing team struggling with this? What questions are they bringing up? What challenges are they having? And you've got to be documenting all of that during the pilot so that you can then design a rollout strategy that pre-addresses all of those issues, and delivers the right kind of training, education, technical support, whatever it might be to make that deployment successful to your portfolio.
Just curious, have you ever had something like an implementation that the implementation was so painful that you were just like, look, I don't care. I can't.
Yes, I have.
Same. I hate, and obviously we're not going to name anybody or anything, but we do have vendors that listen to this, and so just coming from two decision makers, like test your own implementation processes and don't make it a heavy lift or painful on our side. Don't make us have 3 calls. I can't, I just can't. I do think that there are some probably really great products out there that get I don't know, lost pretty quickly just because the mechanics of it, or the connectivity, or the process, or you want to move too slowly. I tell all my vendors, I'm like, you better move fast. I'll tell you to slow down. Don't let me be bored. Not like that. I'm not trying to be ostentatious, but I just wondered if you ever had that experience or not, where you were just like, I can't.
That's another reason I think why the pilot is so important.
Yeah.
When you are going to be deploying a new technology or a new process to your team, you can't be the only one behind the idea. You've got to have some other people behind the idea with you. And so if you can build advocates through the properties that went through the pilot, and, really when they get to the end of that testing period, they really see the value in what you have provided, then, they're like your advocates that are going out and help sell it for you. We talked about this before, but you really have to market your marketing tool. You have to have a marketing campaign
that you said that. I've never heard.
To push out whatever that new technology or process is that you're selling to your business.
I actually think that's brilliant. And also that vendors should take note that we need materials that are geared towards our internal teams that say, what's in it for you? I know that I've failed in the past when I've adopted something because I can see it. You know what I mean? I see the whole picture already done, and my site teams are getting a paint by number, and it takes a long time to see it come to fruition. But also, what if the vendors provided us with and I don't want to just say a training video. Like, that's not what it is different. It's marketing. You have to market to the end user
Yes.
for there to be success there. I mean, I don't know. Do you create those things yourselves? Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, it all depends on what it is, but absolutely, whether it's a video or just a FAQ sheet, a training course, whatever that is. It's great when the vendors already have that provided for you. Like you said, when they provide that, that's an excellent resource. Or sometimes they might like take it halfway across the finish line and have, some documents, and then maybe we can jazz them up a little bit.
Yeah. Right. Just edit PDF.
Right.
I do think that there is a difference though between marketing to the decision maker and then helping the decision maker market to the teams. Mm-hmm. And that's the only way that it's going to be successful. That's the only way adoption is going to be high. Mm-hmm. I know that a few years ago we implemented a new CRM, and they themselves would come to me and identify like the high users, the rock stars, if you will. And that was nice. Like I didn't have to go look for the ones that were, grasping it and could become those like mini product experts. They were telling me, hey, these are the people that just like took off and ran with it. And I loved that. That was so helpful. Mm-hmm. That was so helpful to me. For sure. Anything else you want to say to decision?
Well, I think what we're talking about here really speaks a lot to the evolution of marketing, because, 10, 15 years ago, did your marketing director also need to be an implementation specialist?
No.
That is a skill that is required of your marketing teams today that was not even thought of 10 years ago.
But also, we didn't think we had a choice. I never thought I had a choice. Like anything that came from my manager, anything that came from anyone, I just did it. Like there was like a trust and an obedience and you picked it, let's go, and I think not only are we having to prove it kind of to, the people that are spending the money, the stakeholders, I also just think for some reason we have to prove it to the end user also, like that they need to fit it into their schedule, that they need to figure it out, that they need to embrace it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. Do you like?
You're never wrong.
Oh, I am all the time. But I also think that that's part of the adoption gap. Sometimes is that like somehow there's a shift now in the person, sitting there, and not everyone, I don't want to say everyone, I'm making a generalization, but like it's easy to identify the super users because the bulk are just like, I'll try that someday. I'll see, you know what I mean? And you're just like, come on, we want to be fun, uplifting people. We don't want to be the ones in there with a carrot just being like, if you don't create this video in 2 weeks, you don't work here anymore. Like we don't. Sorry, that was harsh. That went too far. But I don't know.
So let's talk about the non-decision maker. Okay. So here I am, whether I'm working in marketing or I'm a member of the community management team, and this is the technology that's been provided to me by my company. Yeah. I didn't choose this, but this is what I got to work with.
Right.
I think that there are some really important things to keep in mind there too. First of all, you want to lean in. Like you want to really get to know all of the capabilities of that marketing technology or tool that's available to you.
Yeah.
And just start experimenting.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Yeah, definitely. See what you're capable of. Try to figure out new ways that you could use it that are maybe even go beyond what was described to you as how it could be used. Look for those opportunities. And when something's not working or when it's clunky, or when, you're not getting the result that you were told you would get from this.
Yeah.
Document. I know it's frustrating and in the moment you just kind of want to close the browser window and like move on with your day, but document what is not going well. Because if that technology is not a best in class, it's probably because nobody is telling the vendor that it's not working or that you're having this particular issue. So be the one who takes the extra 2 or 3 minutes, take a screenshot, show the results, this is what didn't go well. fix this for me,
Yeah.
and then figure out who your advocate is within your company that's then going to, follow up with that vendor and make sure that gets corrected, adjusted, streamlined, whatever needs to happen.
If I had a nickel for every time I found out something wasn't working and someone had known about it for a while and for whatever reason just like suppressed it, or that's a culture thing. Like everyone should feel like they can say like, hey, is it supposed to do this?
Right.
Like almost need to make a list of like what could go wrong. And like, like this would mean it's not working. This would mean it's not working. This, whatever that looks like, it's hard to lay it all out. But I definitely have had moments, and it's been with every piece of tech, not just marketing. Like you'll hear something and I'll be like, it's doing what? Or it's not doing what? And you're like, no, that's not what we bought something else. Let's figure this out. And then we get to it. But yeah, they don't raise their hand. So yeah, if you are a non-decision maker that's been delivered this, tool bag with all these tools in it, and one of the tools is broken, like, please tell us.
Yeah. And we'll get
tell
it.
someone.
We'll get it to where it needs to be, or we'll hold the vendor accountable, for not meeting their end of the bargain.
Yeah. Do you think, and I can't remember who I talked about this with, but do you think that leasing associates are nervous at all these tools? Like if they use all of them and if they're working, that they'll feel like there's less value to them as a human? Has anyone ever said that to you?
No one has said it to me, but I could absolutely understand why someone would feel that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that is absolutely false.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you look at, the technology that we're using today, and yes, it adds value, but nothing replaces that human interaction. You need the humans to be coinciding with the AI. The AI is the support, but the human is the one that's really making the magic happen. Automate the mundane so that you can really focus on the experience. That's the best way that I look at that partnership between humans and AI. I think that we will always need AI and we will always need humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think the relationship could be different, or the saturation could be different depending on what that looks like. I like that you said, though, like, make the magic happen. I've been teaching NALP and leasing classes for, gosh, I don't even know how long at this point. And when they start talking about like, well, I just use a template. I have a great template. And I'm like, okay, then like you now have told me that I can replace you. You now have said that I can write something so profound and wonderful that it just closes the lease for you. Well, then why will I need you? And I try to tell them, like, I don't say it this way, I might next time, be magical. Because if that's what we can't replicate, then that's a way to build value. But I don't think that enough frontline leasing people do recognize their power and like recognize their importance. And so that's the other sort of like hot tip for today. Be magical on all of those other things, on the experience, on the feelings, get the feels. Like that's what we're here for, is supposed to be the feels. Because I don't think AI can do the feels yet. I mean, a little if we curate some fun language, but like it's about the feel.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting. You believe that. Has anybody ever said like, no, Nikki, or like, do you go to conferences and start to wonder like if the person sitting next to you is like, no, I'm replacing everyone as fast as possible?
I hear that. But I think what I'm starting to hear more of is less that we're replacing humans and we're just putting the humans in roles that are more specific to driving business impact.
Yeah.
It's that role specialization that we're able to do through the use of technology.
Yeah.
I have yet to really see a company come forward with a compelling case study where they have replaced headcount. They've just moved it around a little bit.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, what that allows a company to do is to attract better talent. Because, the team members are focused on the areas that they're particularly passionate about.
Right.
So they have better people making those magical moments happen.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm hearing when I'm going to conferences and talking to peers.
Yeah. There are some, I think, that talk about like, well, we run this many units off of this many people, but but the variables in that, like you can't scale that if you're not 6 high rises in a downtown zone. Like we understand that. Even like there are examples, I think, even where you were at, a company one time that had like this sort of unit of buildings in a very specific area that ran off of X amount of people. Well, we weren't calling it centralization.
Right.
15 years ago, we were just like, yeah, this is smart. Like this makes sense. You know what I mean? There's no office in these other buildings. Like I just, like to your point, that's not a compelling case study for, companies that might have 9 garden style communities, but it does feel like the industry is trying to push everyone to feel like they're a participant in centralization. I'm a huge proponent of specialization, huge. And like we have, her title is portfolio support specialist, but like when she came on board, she worked mostly remote, which is obviously a very attractive thing that multifamily can't typically offer. And hyper focused on delinquency and counseling people, like trying to keep people out of eviction, try to keep people housed and stable. And then now it's sort of, it's migrating in towards financial risk assessment on the screening side and then on the fraud side. And so like we're definitely, I'm in that with you because there is like a specialization conversation that maybe is also happening while everyone else is over here like, we're going to centralize. And you're like, well, what does that even mean? And how is that even possible in some...
Centralization means different things to different people in different companies. So you have to make sure that you know what your company means when they state centralization. Yeah. And that you are thinking of ideas that support that particular strategy. Because you're right, geographical location plays a huge impact on the type of centralization that you can do. So you just have to really understand what your company is really trying to do when they use the term centralization.
Yeah, it feels like a buzzword and I roll my eyes all the time when I hear it because I'm just like, oh, I don't really know. What else should we tell, our end users, I guess, about tech stack, about how we decide why we do it? We told them like, raise your hand if it's not working, but do you think most of them understand? Like I always say out loud, I'm not trying to make your life or your job harder. If I buy something, I'm trying to make your job or your life easier. I'm trying to get that person to the, end of the sales funnel. So that way all you have to do is be magical. Like they already have all the information. You don't have to memorize everything. I don't know. How does your team, I guess, are you carrot or stick? I hate that phrasing, but that's what it is, right? Like, are you very rah, these are my top users, and you highlight those people so people want to be those people?
That's part of our monthly reporting package that goes out. The top users on the different platforms are celebrated.
Okay.
Because we want them to be recognized for, it's clear to see, if you have a team that is creating a lot of videos, then you can see like how many prospects are engaged with these videos, how many times were the links clicked on. Like that is speaking directly to the interest that you're generating for your property. So we like to celebrate those teams that are, at the top of the list, whether it's video leasing or social media. We're definitely looking at those metrics and sharing them. Even the way that our teams are interacting with our AI, there's different metrics to show that relationship of how we're handling handoffs and different things like that. And so celebrating the teams that are top performing in those areas as well is really important.
Just embrace it, people. Embrace it. It's not going anywhere.
I think for the on-site end user, the thing that's most important is remember your role, and what the end goal is of your role. You have the most important job in the company. And I realize that sometimes as, operators, we don't do a great job of really communicating that. Yeah. But really, that front line team member is the most important person in our organization. And their job is to give every person that they interact with a positive experience and influence that person's decision to want to sign a lease in our community and then want to stay there. So if we've given you a video tool or an AI or, whatever it is, we are trying to help you have everything available to be influential in that person's decision to sign a lease with us. Because at the end of the day, like if you look at the value for a community that's low occupied versus the value of a community that's highly occupied, I mean, the power that you have as a leasing representative to increase the value of your real estate asset is amazing. Like maybe we need to give those metrics to our team members a little bit more. Like this is the value of your property at 86% occupancy versus this is the value at 96% occupancy, and help them understand how much power they have to drive value for their company.
Yeah, they don't know by and large. And like the exercise I do, and I learned it from Nikki Laura. She's all over this podcast today. When I start CALP in any leasing class, I'll ask them if they know the value of their community. And usually it's like no one wants to say out loud anything. And so I'll always say, well, hey, let's do some conservative math here. Everyone get their phones out. Well, their phones are already out. Who am I kidding? I'm like, get your calculator pulled up on your phone. And I use very just wildly conservative numbers because the impact of it is like, it's effective even though it's still pretty low. So I'll tell them to just do like $100,000 times their unit count, and they'll add it up. And it's almost like watching a groom's face when the bride comes down. I watch their faces when I see they get the number, and they had no idea most of the time until they sat in that particular class and in that environment. And I do it with my own teams, always have. But they'll look up and they'll be like, Katrina, it's worth $32 million. And I'll be like, I know. And I'm like, and you're kind of in charge of the health and success of that community in many ways, you know? And I think half of them, they're scared after that. And then the other half, they sit up a little bit taller. You know what I mean? They sit up a little taller.
I used to teach sales training as a part of my previous roles. And one of the very first things we would talk about at the beginning of class when we were just talking about your personal appearance and just that personal energy that you exude to your customers. And we would say, you are the representative we have chosen to represent this multi-million-dollar asset for this national real estate company. And once you put it into that perspective, it's like, oh, that's kind of a lot of responsibility on my shoulders, you know, and I need to make sure I'm playing the part every day when I show up at work.
They need to just realize, like, you're a big deal.
Yeah.
You're a big deal. And we tried to put tools in your tool bag, and it's like a maintenance person wouldn't, go up and, struggle with a screwdriver if we'd given them a drill. And that's what we're giving, that's what we're really trying to do, because I do think like the screwdriver was already there, but we want to give you a drill. We want it to be, faster, more efficient, more precise, whatever that looks like all those marketing tools. That's what we're really trying to do. I'm just looking at our time here. Oh, we have time. We can keep going. Everyone will listen to us at like 1.5 anyway, so that's fine. We both kind of wanted to talk about data today a bit. Yeah. And because we've touched on it, we've talked about attribution, I think tech stack wise too, it's just like you were talking about, and I could visualize this like broken path. Do you shop, like, is the integration piece like part of your sort of like first group of questions? Do you integrate with this? Do you integrate with that? Like, is that big?
And you have to take it a step further. Like, it's one thing to say we integrate, but what information is being passed back and forth, Yeah. We have a particular situation right now where we're just trying to get our hands on the XML feed that goes from this one vendor to this other vendor, just to see what the data is that they're sharing with each other. And that has been like pulling teeth just to get that information.
Ouch.
And so,
and that's your data kind of.
Right.
I mean,
yes. Yeah. And so that's really, you have to take it a step further. It's one thing to say, oh, we integrate. I'm doing the air quotes for those that are listening right now.
No, that makes perfect sense.
It's one thing to say that, but what data are you sharing? And, can I see the referring source being passed all the way through so that when the guest card hits my system, I know what all they touched in the prospect journey along the way.
Yeah.
That's really important to know.
It's super important. Do you think some of them don't share it intentionally, or do you think it's just like it's an afterthought? I mean, Yeah, good point, first of all, on like integration being this just very like abstract term, because it could mean something really basic, like, well, yeah, like if they do this here, then it'll automatically go into your, as a guest card or something like that. And then, but like, I'm not even sure I've honed in, and I'm a big part of it, but it's like, I should just have a list of questions that's like, do you integrate with this? Do you integrate with that? Is it one way? Is it two way? Is there going to be an upload, download? Is this like actually an API? And sometimes I say phrases I don't actually even fully understand, but like, I start sounding like I do.
It goes back to that theme of staying curious and understanding that your sales rep that you're talking to may not know the answers to those questions. Like, I'm the type of person that always ends up finding my way to like their in-house tech person because my questions go deep enough, and my sales rep has been relaying the information back and forth when finally they'll just say, let me set up a call with this person on my team and just let you ask these questions directly. But there's nothing wrong with doing that. You want to make sure you understand, because at the end of the day, the reason why this is so important is because you are going to be the one who is sitting there with your reports in front of your regionals, your VPs. You're trying to sell why I need these dollars in the budget in order to convert these leases, and I've got to have the data to back it up. And so if I layered too much in my tech stack and I didn't make sure that the data passed all the way through, guess what? It becomes a whole lot harder to sell that story.
And I just, like, my goal is like nothing manual. Like, I trust nothing that's manual. Not because I don't trust, like, humans. I just think, I don't want anything to be manual, both because I don't want it to be an extra step of work, but then also because I want it to be, mechanically driven. I want it to be foolproof, and I want to know for sure that's why I asked you earlier. Well, I was just really curious about, like, do you still have drive-by and signage on there, just to see, how you felt about, I guess, some of those things. So then in the scope and conversation of data, how are you selling social right now? Like, I think the lead generation data is a little bit easier to see, easier to talk about, because like the conversion tools live more often in those sort of, like, I call them information sources, but like, what's a conversion on the social side? Like, if they just liked me and they had never liked me before, if they, posted something, tagged something, if, do we just look at posts and say like, well, that was a successful post, look at us winning? Like, what are you doing with your social data? How's that working?
So a couple different ways you need to look at it. First of all, I'm super excited about some of the business intelligence tools that are available, because sometimes it's all just about correlating data. So if you can, use the whatever BI tools you might have available within your organization to be able to show, here are some of the key KPIs on these different properties social. And then here is how they're performing, leasing velocity, days to convert, different things like that. And sometimes you can't really show directly from social all the way down to a lease, but you can show a correlation of data. The communities that are hitting these KPIs on social are also consistently hitting these KPIs on their leasing velocity. And you just have to make some connections there. So that's definitely one way that you can look at some of those things. Another thing that you want to do is just, make sure that you are explaining the marketing strategy to your business. Like, that's one of the big projects I'm working on right now, is just creating more of a visual marketing plan for my teams that shows the entire path of that customer journey and all of the different touch points along the way, and really identifying, like, these are ones where we will see points of conversion, but these are ones that are just influential in keeping the customer moving down the path. And that way you can really come back and say, the reason we're investing in this is not because we're going to see that ROAS in the report, that return on ad spend, but it's because it keeps them moving through. When we're really good at this particular metric, we see higher lead numbers coming into the community.
Yeah.
So just telling the story and maybe even using some visuals like that.
I visualized myself literally like on a trail at a park, and it's like you have all of this like, signage or something. And for me, like I don't love to jog or run. It's not really my favorite thing. But if I were on a path and there was communication that said like, stick with us, stick with it, stay with it, like would I run further? And that's the way like I just like metaphorically pictured that in terms of just like understanding like they're going to start here because they need somewhere to live and they have a budget and they have a city in mind, or at least like a neighborhood or something like that. And then where are they going and how are we keeping them on the path,
right,
like on our path, I guess. So I love that there's a visualization there, and then being able to kind of see like when they engage. You know what I equate it to? I've been reading a lot about college admissions because of Finley. And there was a period of time where applicants were deferred. And so there was, like things on Reddit or whatever that you can find that actually said that some universities value engagement when deciding in the end between like, are you declined or are you accepted? And they, not all of them are using this, large number of it, but I was just like, wow, like they're actually articulating that they want to see if you've emailed, they want to see if you've toured, they want to see if you've engage with them on some of the socials. And so I'm not saying that we were like feverishly, engaging with any universities there for a while, but I just find it interesting. Like, it's not like we're the only people tracking this. It's not like we're far from the only industry that does it. But I think the difference between like multifamily, college admissions, and like, buying a shirt on TikTok or makeup, like that's an impulse buy. So like, are you doing some of the same marketing like impulse buyers? Are you doing TikToks? I hate to say the word reels. My daughter would make fun of me so bad for saying that word. But I mean, like, depending on your community, to your point earlier, depending on your community, if your demographic is active, more on the Facebook side, I don't know. But are you doing all of that? In terms of when you say social, does it include all of those things?
Our teams are so good at reels.
Are they?
Oh my God.
Okay. That makes me feel better.
And I really thank our residential marketing team for that, our director and our regional marketing managers.
Yeah.
They are fantastic. They've actually created a social channel that is private, that is just specific to our teams to kind of share tips and download templates for reels and different things like that. But yeah, our teams do a great job at that.
Yeah, I find it interesting, and I say this all the time. I'm just like, I find it wild that my most active socially in their personal life people are my least active in the work. I have a few of them where I'm just like, look, like you are putting out TikToks personally all the time, but yet like I just want some really basic stuff, like go water the flowers and take a video of it. I don't know. I don't know what those barriers are, but like I love that you have a team that's just saying like, well, hey, maybe do this. Because I do think there is a little bit of like paralysis where you're just like, well, what do I do today? Like, what's going to be interesting? And then there's other people that think they're interesting all the time.
Right.
I fall in that category.
And sometimes just what they think is interesting may not be interesting to our audience, So,
also true.
You have to give a little bit of guidance and ideas. And I agree with you. Like, remove that idea paralysis that they have. And here's 3 different things you could try. Do the one that feels the most natural to you.
Yeah, I like that. You give them options.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you ever had any that were like in your, like based on your metrics that you would call like viral? Did you ever have any?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, we celebrate when reels get to 1,000 views.
Okay.
That's like a big deal, and we make sure everybody knows.
I love that.
So yeah, I mean, it's fun, and it's a unique and interesting way for our team members to show off their properties. They're working at these gorgeous real estate assets, and it's just a really fun way for them to be proud of the places that they work.
How do you still title, and I don't say still because I still do, I didn't mean to phrase it that way, but like what is the title of your entry-level leasing person? What's their?
Leasing consultant.
Leasing consultant. I think it was Matt with RealLink, and I talked about like, is that a relevant and exciting and attractive title anymore? Because I didn't know what a leasing consultant. I was a leasing consultant in 2001, and it's still the same, but the job is so different.
Yes.
Because like you said, like there's marketing, and then like the marketing continues when they get on the site. I don't know if you've ever thought, I mean, I've had conversations about retitling.
We experimented with that at a previous organization that I was with.
Yeah.
The title was Customer Experience Specialist.
Oh my.
Yes. And, there were some benefits to that. But at the same time, I think it confused some people.
Yeah. It's also a lot of syllables.
Yeah. It made it really difficult to recruit for that position. So we ended up just in the recruitment, we listed it as a leasing consultant, but then when they showed up on day one, it was customer experience specialist.
I mean, I don't know, I'm always asking myself, like, what is the job today? Like, what is it that we really ask them to do, especially as that specialization conversation keeps coming in? Like, if there's other pieces that we, for good business reasons, have someone else do, like at the end of, at the end of it, are they content creators? Yes. Are they marketers? Yes. Are they brand ambassadors? Yes. Are they leasing consultants? Yes. Like they're supposed to ask for the sale. You're salespeople. I don't know if you know this. They're salespeople. We're all salespeople, at the end of the day. I just wondered if you'd ever thought about it, or if you're doing anything with that. I don't know. We'd probably, like the whole industry would have to shift.
Yeah.
And we aren't typically we don't move that quickly.
No. And that's, some of what we're dealing with in our technology today. We've been so focused on only letting technology into our space that is, designed for the multifamily industry. Yeah. And as a result, we've missed out on some of the greatest technological advancements that are out there. We're sitting here trying to build it for our own industry when, like, sometimes it already exists and we're just afraid to use it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm going to ask you 2 questions, and then that'll be our wrap up.
Okay.
What's one thing about the good old days that you miss? And then what's one thing that has just been life-changing?
Oh, 2 good questions. Okay. So
I did not put these on the outline.
No.
I did not prepare her for this. I like to veer off script sometimes.
Okay.
Something you miss.
Something I miss about the good old days. I mean, where my mind goes with that is what I miss maybe about some of the roles that I've been in. I do miss being on site with people.
Yeah.
And I know it's challenging. Believe me, I know today we have a lot of issues with customers on site and just some of the interactions. We had those 20 years ago as well.
Sure did.
We just didn't have social media to, exacerbate some of it.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But by and large, I just really loved the aspect of my job that was helping people. So I do miss that just day-to-day interaction directly with the customer. There's not really anything that replaces that.
Yeah, agree.
What was your second question?
What's just been complete game changer somewhere over your career?
That's so tough. I mean, I would say, I don't know if this is really specifically where you're going with that question.
There's no wrong answer. I'm not going anywhere.
The game changer for me has been shifting from that frontline marketing representative to being a leader of people. I'm in a position today where I'm doing less of the direct tactical marketing strategy, and I'm really helping my team, providing resources and direction and feedback to my team for them to be doing that work. And that is really a pretty big game changer. Being in that position of sometimes I have to kind of sit back and maybe not speak up or say what I want to say and really let my team explore and find the right solutions, let them take some risks. It's one thing taking the risk yourself. It's another being the person who's accountable for the end result, but letting your team take the risk to figure it out. That's a much different place to be in. So it's scary, but it's also exciting at the same time and very rewarding.
Yeah. That needs to resonate in my brain a little bit. Let other people take risks. and be a great leader. Well, I've never known anyone that didn't just immediately be just like, oh, Nikki Crosby. I either want to be her or work near her. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here in our podcast studio for The Complex. And you've been a fantastic guest. I told you you'd be a one-hit wonder. Like there's no editing. One take wonder. No editing required. Thank you all for listening. Like and subscribe as always. Thank you.